I know we talked about how the Nets resurrected both of these teams, but we had talked about briefly how the way the Celtics built this team was getting Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum in back to back drafts, both third overall. And the four players that were taken above them, right? And both of these players also going via the Nets trade, right? Getting Jalen Brown number three, and the players in that draft ahead of him were Ben Simmons to the Sixers and Brandon Ingram, right? So Sixers, Lakers. And then the following year, same draft order, same people. We had Markel Fultz and Lonzo Ball. So we were talking about this off air. There's an alternative universe where either Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, or both of them are either both or either one of them are in Philadelphia or LA with either LeBron or Joel Embiid potentially, or on the Pelicans if they make that Anthony Davis trade still.
Yeah, I think if they go to the Lakers, they would have gone to the Pelicans, which is the funniest thing. If Boston wins the championship, is this was perfectly preventable. I don't know if Magic Johnson didn't have that one year where he's like, I want to resurrect the Lakers. I want to be a part of basketball operations. And I realized I don't want to do this. And then he talked himself into drafting Lonzo Ball instead of Jason Tatum, who's a top 5 player in the NBA right now. And then you also have the 76ers who, oh yeah, trust the process, man. Like, man, the process, like, just trust me, bro. It's going to work. It's like, well, it didn't work with Brett Brown. It did not work with Doc Rivers. And it's not going that well currently because Joel Embiid is the only one there. You signed Tobias Harris instead of Jimmy Butler. I mean, you have Tyrese Maxey on that team. That's really your only saving grace. But outside of those players, it's like, what are we actually doing in Philadelphia? We expect you to be stupid. We expect mediocrity. We expect bad draft picks out of the Philadelphia 76ers because, frankly, it's Philadelphia. I was at a beach one time and we're in a parking lot. And a little kid gets out of a van. He sees some trash in the parking lot. It was kind of at a trashy beach. And then he groans to himself and he goes, ugh, it's just like Philadelphia. Even little kids don't like Philadelphia and they know it's a filthy city and we expect this from you. But LA, to see Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram, and I know people try and argue like, oh, well, Brandon Ingram, could be on the level of Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum. Brandon Ingram in the playoffs this year sucked. He was awful. Every time he took a shot, I cringed when I saw it. And I think with Tatum and Brown being drafted by the Lakers, it would have been a part of that Anthony Davis trade, and you would have seen Tatum and Brown in a Pelicans uniform, which at least would have saved Lakers fans the pain of seeing Boston win Banner 18 and pass them in championships once again in the NBA ranks as far as how many championships, who's the greatest franchise here. You wouldn't have seen Boston be perpetually good instead of being good with LeBron, winning a championship where we could potentially see Tatum and Brown win maybe 2, maybe 3 if they win the championship this year. So for Lakers fans, you at least could have sent them to the Pelicans for Anthony Davis instead of Boston being there, sitting with Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum for the next 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll rebuttal with is, do you think that they still trade both of them? Because
Yeah.
let's remember that they traded Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, a bunch of draft picks. I think they had the draft rights for DeAndre Hunter that they traded there as well. They traded pretty much their entire roster outside of Kyle Kuzma and Alex Caruso in
Yeah.
that trade. Do you think that, like, because both of them were good pretty much right away. Jason Tatum, I believe, was first team all rookie, and then he kind of immediately erupted there. Same goes with Jalen Brown. Do you think that, like, one of them would be good enough where they could package one of these players to get Anthony Davis and they pair these three together in LA? Or do you think that just the Lakers and how they've made trades with just about everybody the last decade, they're going to give up everybody?
Yeah, the thing is with Boston is the LA Lakers didn't have this guy named Brad Stevens as their head coach, which I think played a big role in the development of the two Jays in Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. And that team was set up a lot better for success. And you have the Celtics franchise there, where with the Lakers, I don't necessarily think they would have kept both of them because they traded both of the people that they drafted at those picks in Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball. And I think it would have been a similar situation where the coach there wouldn't necessarily, I think it was Luke Walton at the time, or Mike Brown,
Sounds about right.
and they still weren't a playoff team. And I don't think they would have been as successful and made a deep playoff run in LA. And
No.
I think maybe you trade one of them, but I still think both of them would have ended up on the Pelicans.
I mean, let's look back at those Lakers teams before LeBron. The team right before him, right? Brandon Ingram. What happened to him in LA? He was kind of a disappointment. He leaves. He goes to New Orleans. He's been better in New Orleans. Let's be honest there. And then Julius Randle was a shame in LA. He goes to New York. He's better. He was an all-star. And then same goes with Lonzo Ball. Before he was hurt, he was doing a lot better in New Orleans and also in Chicago. So a lot of the people who left ended up doing better than in LA. So I think that's a fine point.
Yeah.
Then we look at the Sixers. Okay. They had Ben Simmons, who he is one of the biggest NBA mysteries of all time. Let's be honest here. He was a defensive-minded point guard who they were comparing to Magic Johnson because he was tall.
He's tall. Yeah.
He was tall and he could pass well. Never understood that compliment, but all right. Couldn't score. And then, so he had like a 5-year run where he was an all-star and he was a good player overall. And then I don't know what has happened since then.
Trae Young snatched his soul. I don't know.
Trae Young just ruined that.
Well, it's kind of
man.
like the Kardashian Jenner curse. I don't know, because Ben Simmons, as much as he doesn't play, he's still making a lot of money. He's still making appearances at the Met Gala. He's still living an NBA lifestyle, and that's kind of the dream. If you are a NBA player, you're dating superstar models, and then you're also at the Met Gala, and you don't even have to play. Like, good for him, to be honest. I don't know if he's the biggest thief in NBA history. I don't know if he's just committed highway robbery, but he's doing something right.
He's found a way to quiet quit in the NBA and still make a bunch of money. So congrats to him. And then Markelle Fultz, another guy. This is just as we make fun of the NBA for being stupid many times, or at least the NBA analysts, who I can honestly defend NFL analysts with them not being nearly as stupid as NBA analysts, especially when it comes to draft talk. Markelle Fultz was immediate, like, oh yeah, he's the number 1 overall pick. Markelle Fultz.
Yeah.
Danny Ainge is like, I don't know if I like that. Let's trade back with the Sixers. We'll take Jason Tatum at number 3. You guys can take Markelle Fultz. We already know what the Lakers are going to do. Markelle Fultz was a disaster in Philadelphia. He went to Orlando, and he's been a fine role player, I guess is the best you can call him. What a bust he was. So
he plays.
He played. Hey, you know what? He plays in the NBA.
He does.
He does better than, you know what? We don't play in the NBA, so who are we, right? The Sixers, if they had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they had paired them inevitably with Joel Embiid, who to that point was injured for most of his career. He ends up getting healthy. He gets paired with Ben Simmons. Very awkward pairing from the start. Didn't work out. Never made it past the second round. He has Jaylen Brown. He has Jason Tatum. He potentially also has Jimmy Butler as well. Probably couldn't afford Tobias Harris. Oh, no. But that team surely could have beaten that Raptors team. With Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid, and Jimmy Butler, and JJ Redick, that team beats the Raptors.
Oh, yeah. Definitely don't forget about good old JJ there. And I don't necessarily know if they would have Jimmy Butler on that team, but I think if you have Tatum, Brown, and Embiid that year, I definitely think you would be able to beat the Toronto Raptors that year, because their point guard is Kyle Lowry, and then he's like a fine point guard. He like hustles. Good for him. You had the ancient relic of Marc Gasol in that series. You had the ancient relic of Serge Ibaka, and then you had Pascal Siakam, who is not the Pascal Siakam we see today in Indiana. You have OG Anunoby, who wasn't the OG Anunoby who saw Ice Spice on the sideline and is like, God damn, I better bust my ass this game and play as hard as I've ever played in my life. And then you have Kawhi, who hits one of the craziest shots in the NBA to win that game. So I do think the Sixers would have at least gone past the second round, because they wouldn't have needed Joel Embiid to get past the second round at this point, because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown would have already gotten them past the second round on their own without the matter of Joel Embiid's health, because then you can also rest Joel Embiid in the regular season, because the reason why Joel Embiid isn't healthy outside of his large frame right now as a tall basketball player who came in with injury issues. Typically, if you're a tall center, that doesn't tend to get better as your NBA career progresses. But Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, credit to them, because what they do is pretty much play every single regular season game. They don't load manage, and Jason Tatum has never missed an NBA playoff game. Jaylen Brown had one injury in the playoffs, but other than that, he hasn't missed any NBA playoff games either. So that definitely would have at least gotten them past the second round by now, where Joel Embiid is just sitting there in the second round, and he's sitting there in the first round right now, where he lost to Trae Young in the second round, and now he loses to Jalen Brunson in the first round, and Tom Thibodeau, and Josh Hart,
Dante DiVincenzo.
Dante DiVincenzo, who turned into Steph Curry in that round.
Yeah, he sure did. So the Sixers, obviously, we didn't trust the process, and I don't think, looking back, that that's a regret for us.